everyone, so welcome back to another informational video. Today I will be discussing interview questions. That's right, interview questions, because most of us think we know what those questions are going to look like. If you've never worked in this field, then I'm pretty sure you're probably thinking that the interview questions will be the same like any other job that you might have had that's not in this field, because let's face it, most jobs across multiple industries have pretty much the same questions, right? You know, what's your experience? What do you think you can bring to the table? Tell me some of your assets and your skills. And of course, all of those things are very important for when you are, trying to get an internship. But let me just tell you a little story on how your girl cried on her first internship interview to become a therapist. That's right. Boo-hoo-hoo, cry. And not because, something happened that made me cry. I was not prepared. I had a lot of emotional things happening all at once in my personal life. And when you are for me at least, when you're in a therapeutic office, something about it, I don't know, even though you're going for an interview, I personally felt like, okay, why do I feel like I'm in therapy? First of all, so the first place that I had interviewed, I literally only interviewed there because there was another girl that had worked at this particular company's center in a totally different state, because they have multiple facilities across the nation. And I knew that there was another girl that worked there. If you watch my other videos, that was AKA the AMAs, the girl that wanted to go to the American Music Awards, then be concerned about anything related to school. But why did I cry? So, and it wasn't like boo-hoo-hoo. It was just like tears coming to my eyes, and I was like, oh my God, why are you about to cry? Because I wasn't prepared. Some of the questions that are asked on the interviews to become a therapist can get personal if you allow them to. So some of the questions where it's like, well, why did you enter into this field? A lot of us have personal reasons as to why we entered into the field. But in an interview, you do not need to disclose that to people you don't even know, right? And I know that sounds like common sense, but most of the people that enter into this field, they're entering into it for a reason. Like, there's a passion, a drive behind why, because we know it's damn sure not money, okay? So you have to have something that you want to offer based on either like a personal experience, an experience that you witness from other people, anything. It could be any reason, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a personal reason. Unlike, my current job, I work in revenue cycle. Like, somebody asked me, well, why do you want to enter this field? I would be like, I'm a numbers person and I've been doing insurance for a long time and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not personal. There's nothing that personally influenced me wanting to get into that field, So, but in the world of therapy, that's where it kind of is like, it gets kind of murky, because if you sit there and it's very dry and it's very like, well, I just feel like, I would be a great therapist because, the world is just short of therapists, and I just wanted to lend a helping hand. Like, you're going to sound disingenuous. You're not going to sound authentically yourself, and you're going to be very off-putting. So of course, naturally, you want to give some type of reason that's a personal reason, but not too much. So when I was asked, it wasn't like super personal, but it was enough of a soft spot with me that I couldn't contain my emotion, because the reason why I entered into this field is because I feel like, as a person of color, an African-American female, that in my community, a lot of people disregard therapy as some taboo thing. And there's a lot of systemic reason behind that, but there's also a lot of cultural and religious reasons behind that. And I feel like it's doing a disservice to my community. And so, now I can give a basic plain answer, but I didn't practice for that question because my mind was solely focused on what interviews look like when I applied for jobs that were in revenue cycle, in insurance, customer service, patient care, anything like that, that were very much paper driven, not people driven type positions. So when you're interviewing for a people driven, job, internship, you have to bring who you are as a person, and who you are as a person is going to be shown on this interview, because you are essentially selling yourself Don't get it twisted. They have to sell themselves too. But you want to make sure that you're being very authentic. And a part of your authenticity is making sure that you know what to provide and what not to provide. The number one thing I'm going to say before I get into, yes, the notebook is back, y'all. The notebook is back. Do not personally disclose anything. Like anything about yourself. You can keep it really surface, like I wanted to enter into this field because I've had personal experiences that have influenced me, and that's what drives me to want to work with XYZ demographic. You know, like you don't have to be specific. Like even if you are a victim of domestic violence and you want to work with women and children that are victims of domestic violence, aka trauma, you don't have to disclose that. You like, even with you saying like, you know, from personal experiences, this is why I want to work with this demographic. They can make an assumption that maybe you were a victim, or maybe your parent was a victim, or maybe you had a friend that was a victim. Like, you know, it's very elusive. They're kind of like, okay, we know that he or she might have some type of background or firsthand experience with maybe trauma, but we don't know. It's a guessing game. But when you just flat out and you're like, yeah, I was a victim of domestic violence, and I just remember going through the whole therapy process, and I was in a shelter, and I just really felt like if I could just return that favor, it would just be so amazing. Okay, that's great, and that's unfortunate that that happened, but that's disclosing too much. And it kind of goes back to your therapeutic skills of, do you personally disclose in your sessions? So those are some things that you kind of need to reel back in and say, would you provide that same information to a whole group of people? Because you might be in an interview with more than one person. My first interview, the one that I was tearful about why I wanted to enter into therapy, there was like 3 or 4 people, and I was only told there was one person. Now, mind you, when I used to do banking and stuff, and I was used to having, depending on what level of job I was applying for, I'm used to having more than one person in, you know, the room for an interview. But when I was told, you know, like, hey, you're going to be meeting with Dr. So-and-so, that's all I prepared for mentally, because you feel like you can have a connection with a person that's one-on-one. If you prepare for multiple people, then it just brings a different element. Not only that, the office that I was in for this interview was one of the director's offices that he did sessions in. And we were all crammed into one room. We're in Florida. It was hot. Like, they had the AC, but let me tell you, it was hot. All those people in that little room. And first of all, my nerves were already on edge. And I was hot. I was hot. So hopefully with COVID, you guys, hopefully with COVID, this is eliminating some of this, because I mean, COVID is horrible, and I'm definitely not laughing about that, but I'm just laughing at the fact that like some of the things that were common practices, like handshaking and being that close, those are some elements that you don't really have to worry about when you're going on a job interview. Like for me, those are some things I worry about, because first of all, I'm a germaphobe. Like, I've watched way too many people not wash their hands. And second of all, like, I cannot get overheated. Like, my hypothalamus goes freaking buck wild. So yeah, I can't do that. But you want to make sure that you're prepared. So I have some questions. So the first one I have is, tell me about yourself. So I know some of you guys might be like, okay, well, tell me, like, hello, I can do that. My name is Camille, and I am at the Chicago school, and I'm, you know, want to be a therapist. And I have, you know, 2 children. We'll just make that up. 2 children, and, you know, I really love my dog. He's so adorable. I don't have a dog. But you see what I'm saying? Like, though, that's great. That is great. But that won't work. That won't work. You really, the tell me about yourself question had stumped me for years. When I was younger in interviews, I would be like, I know myself. So why is this so hard? You need to really, when you're in an interview for these, and actually this applies to almost any interview, but specifically for this, you need to basically be reading what your resume is. So if your resume says that you're proficient at showing empathetic skills, then you need to put that into the tell me about yourself. Like, I feel like I'm a very empathetic person. I feel like I have a great listening ear. I take direction very well. I'm able to meet and exceed tasks. I'm able to, you know, pick up and learn new therapeutic skills in order to meet the client at their level. Like, these are some of the things that you need to bring up as a quick make it 2 to 5 minutes. Don't sit there and go on, and don't make it 30 seconds. So you have to find a balance with that question, but go over, once you complete your educational resume, go over why it is that you feel like, you know, you want this job, and put that in the tell me about yourself speech that you get. Basically, like, just practice summarizing your resume and your skill sets that are related to this field, because they don't really care about how, you know, you started from here and now you've blossomed to this. Like, what did you turn into, a freaking plant? No, you didn't. Yes, you've achieved this point of your educational experience, but they want to know, okay, what did that look like? You know, do you want to talk about like anything that represents, you know, like, I gained a lot of knowledge when I was in my residency. I was able to really understand cultural influence in a therapeutic setting. Like, those are things in this type of industry when you're in anything like that. Yes, talk about those things. Talk about anything that is related to being a therapist. And then if at the end you want to throw in, and yeah, and I'm a dog and a cat lover, so, you know, if there's ever like a therapy dog in here, I would be okay. You know, like, you can still throw in some of your personality, but just don't sit here and make it be all about you and not just your skill set. So that's great. They want to know who you are as a person, but who you are as a person is also what makes you who you are. And what makes you who you are is a lot of your skills. What do you have to bring to the table? All right. So why do you want to be a counselor? This was the one that had me like boo-hoo-hoo, because I didn't realize, like, I didn't feel like I was being personal. I was trying to be surface, but because it was a sweet spot, my reason, I was not prepared for that question. So I would say practice while you're prepared, to prepare for that question. And if it is something extremely personal and something that maybe, yes, you have healed from or you're still healing from, please understand that sometimes the pressure of being in an interview, and especially an interview with a therapist or multiple therapists and supervisors, that you might get overwhelmed. And the more you practice what you're going to say, the less likely you're going to have an emotional response, if at all. You don't want to be dry. You know, you want to show that humanistic side, but you want to make sure that you're also letting them know a genuine reason. You know, like, if you're somebody that's a part of the LGBTQ community, if you don't have to disclose that, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to be like, well, because I'm part of the LGBTQ community. I mean, like, if you want to, like, if you're going to a center and that's their predominant demographic, and you feel like, hey, I just want you to know, like, I'm a part of this community, that's great. But don't feel like you have to divulge that. You could just say, my passion is to work with this demographic of people, because I really feel like I am able to understand some of the things that the clients might be going through. Point blank, period. What demographic do you want to work with? Okay, so this one, when I wrote this literally sent me back to one of the days where I was doing my, not my internship, my practicum. And I was like running one of the online virtual sessions. And and this girl, when that question got asked, she was like, well, I would just like to only work with the demographic of white people and people that are middle class. And I was like, what? Like, I legit, because the way she said it, I was just waiting for her to be like, no, I'm just kidding. But she said it so matter of fact. And she was like, and there's nobody of color. I almost lost my mind. Like, if you do not want to work with people of color, like, okay, first of all, that's ridiculous, because please don't, because the last thing that any person of color needs is for anybody to feel ill will towards them when they're trying to get help of any kind. But the fact that she said it and she added on, and there's nobody of color, and I was like, you need to get out of this program. So just kind of figure out what demographic you want to work with. You probably want to make sure that it's not off-putting, and chances are, if you're interviewing at a certain center, you need to check and make sure the demographic that you say that you want to work with, if you really are trying to work at that school or at that center, that they actually take care of that demographic. Like, yeah, you don't want to be sitting there saying, yeah, I would really love to work with, you know, autistic children, and they're like, okay, but you're sitting in a methadone clinic. Like, honey, what are you doing? Are you lost? Yeah, don't do that. Really think about what demographic you want to work with and be prepared to answer it. And also, if they say why, that brings me back to the last question. Be prepared to say why, but don't make it too personal, okay? What are your favorite therapeutic techniques? Now, me personally, I didn't really have this on my interview, but I heard other students had it on theirs. To me, it's kind of like, why are you trying to test my knowledge like this? You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes when you go on interviews, especially if you're going to be an intern, sometimes people just look down on you. It doesn't matter that you're educated and you might even be older than the person that's interviewing you. It doesn't matter. Sometimes people power trip. And me personally, I feel like that's a power trip question because we're not in class. If you have a therapeutic technique that you favor, great. If you don't, do not feel pressure. You might, and that might be a way to box you in, honestly, because if you say, oh, well, I really like CBT, and they're like, well, we only do DBT here. And you're like, okay. Which is another reason why you really need to review and gain some knowledge of the places that you want to actually work at. You know, if you're just picking anything that comes your way, okay, well, you better be making sure that you're studying what that center does, what that facility is about, and what techniques that they use. Most of that is found on 95% of their pages. Okay, so they'll also ask, you know, like why you wanted to work there, you know, and you got to figure out what is their stance on certain demographics. What are some things that are highlighted on their page that you can bring forward? Like if it says that we really enjoy implementing like play therapy, you know, or art therapy or sand therapy or anything like that, then you need to, if that's what you're really interested in, then you need to bring that forward and be like, I read that you really make sure that whether they're an adult or a child, that you really make the clients feel like they can also participate and benefit from art therapy. And I love art. Art has been my passion. And until I entered into this field, I had no idea you could combine the two. And it's the best of both worlds, you know, like anything that's going to show that, yes, you read what's on their website, you have some knowledge, and then you applied it, okay? Who's your favorite theorist? Now, I don't really think I've heard anybody say this. I think I had one girl at my last internship said that one of the places that she interviewed that she didn't get the job at had asked her this, but when she started telling me about like how the interview went, I felt like the person that asked her that was just kind of being snarky. So, you know, you might want to prepare for who your favorite theorist is. I personally, I wouldn't spend too much time on that. If somebody asks you that and you haven't prepared for it, I would just say, you know, at this moment in my educational process, I really don't have a favorite because I feel like depending on what client I'm working on, I have to adjust to meet them wherever they're at, and not every theorist applies to every client. So, you know, there's ways to zhuzh up your answers. And so, tell me a time where you were able to exhibit conflict resolution. Now, that is a question that is very common when you are going to almost any job, but like customer service or retail or anything like in my past life. But it's common also in this field because there will be times, even if you're a therapist and you're only working with one client at a time, like I had clients that would bring their significant other into therapy, and the next thing you know, you're doing like couples therapy, and next thing you know, they're like arguing, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have to figure out resolutions and figure out how to subdue the room and bring it from a 10 to a 2, you know? So those are some things you need to think about. Like, what are some ways that are therapeutic that you can have conflict resolution? Because when they're asking you that, they're not asking you about a time where you worked at the customer service at Target and a customer was screaming at you, and when you said that you couldn't return their item and you made them happy by at least putting the money back on their card or something. Like, they're not interested in that. They want to know conflict resolution as it's related to therapeutic technique. Everything is related to therapeutic technique. Do not get lost in the shuffle. Make sure that you are focused. Listen, I'm trying to help you get an internship and not struggle like I did, okay? So I'm just trying to tell you some of the things that I messed up horribly on so that you don't do it too, okay? Tell me a time. Oh, wait, I already said that. How do you feel about working with XYZ client? So how do you feel like you would answer that? How do you feel about working with an XYZ client? So you can basically, and sometimes it might be one of your worst fear clients. Like you might be like, oh, I never want to work with somebody that has abused children. Like I will not feel comfortable. I will not feel safe. Like what if they're like, okay, so what if you have a client that you've been seeing for 2 or 3 sessions and then they disclose to you that, you know, they had been in jail because they had beat their child? You know, like there's going to be times where your client will come in the door and present one way to you, especially if you're doing the biopsychosocial for their intake, and you're like, okay, I don't know everything, but I get the gist of it. And next thing you know, they come in with left field, right field, like all over the place. And you're like, whoa, okay, I know people are multifaceted and have a lot, but some of the stuff you would be like, what the heck is going on? Like, I remember one of my professors was saying that she was working with a child, and she had said she would never work with rapists. So for her, working with children, she felt like that was safe zone. Well, she actually found out that this little boy had been molesting and raping his little sister, and he was probably like 10, 11 years old. Yeah. So, you just never know. So if you get asked that question, like if you had to work with your fear type client, be prepared to answer that. And basically, you never know who you're working with at the end of the day. Like, you can have a client that you've had for months and you think you know a good majority of some of the things that are happening and reoccurring problems and history of who they are. And then next thing you know, they're like, yeah, and I didn't tell you that I had been in prison for 20 years. And you're like, well, okay. Let's talk about why today was the day you wanted to disclose that to me. What's on your mind that made you want to open up that part of your life today? So, it's all about really letting the center or the facility or wherever you're interviewing know that you are able to work with multiple clients, because you really don't know at the end of the day who you're really getting. Yes, most centers are like, oh, we only treat OCD, we don't treat anything else, but that's not going to stop a human that you're interacting with to self-disclose anything to you, okay? And you have to be prepared for that. You need to work on your face, okay? Because I know I had to work on my face, and I actually in my office had like a mirror kind of position in a certain part where I could like do a check on my face without the client knowing. Also, I had the clock where the client didn't know. Like, we'll get all into that once you get the position, what that looks like, and some of the things you need to look out for and everything. But today is all about the interview questions. So, what do you hope to gain from working here? So talk about why it is that you want to work there. Talk about what are some of the skills that you hope to actually gain. What are some of the skills you feel like you're lacking just from being at school? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I legit, when I first started interning, not my practicum, because that was telehealth with the students that were at my school, but when I first got my first set of clients, I felt like a fish out of water. I was questioning myself all the time, like, oh my God, like, I felt like a fraud, because I'm like, these are people that have real issues, and I am sitting here as their therapist. Like, they like trust me and they don't even know me, and I feel like a fraud. Like, I was up studying all kinds of stuff, restudying stuff. I'm like, okay, how do you do this? I have a client that's doing this, like, talk about some of the areas that you feel like as a new person that you want to cultivate. Do you want to cultivate like suicide assessments? Are you like, I just don't really feel comfortable with that. If a client came in and exhibited anything or ideation, like, I have a fear that I don't know how to handle a client like that, be honest. And you know why I say that? Because when it happens, you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable going to your supervisor, because you've already initially said, like, this is my fear. Now, obviously, there's going to be multiple things that are going to come up that you're not going to know to be like, this is my fear. Like, I literally had a client in my office one time that I thought she was going to tell me she had murdered her girlfriend. And I was just sitting there like, oh my God. So, you want to make sure that you are open and honest with that and really talk about what your fear is, centered around working with any demographic, and that could be a reason that you hope to gain, some insight on that specific demographic so that you don't have that fear. Make sure that you're encompassing, if you want to learn how, like on my interview, I said that I am not really comfortable with doing the case notes or the biopsychosocial, which I got pretty proficient in because I was doing so many. But at the time I was like super scared. I think we had to turn our notes in every 24 or 48 hours, something like that. And when I heard that, I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to turn in, if I see like 8 to 10 clients a day, I'm going to be able to like turn in all these notes. Well, then I started learning and reading some other therapist notes, and they were very elusive. It's not like I was disclosing a lot in my notes, but I'm a wordy person, if you can't tell, and I would get on a kick, and I'm like, no, I need to redact. So my biggest thing was I hope to gain a better insight on how to write proper notes in a timely fashion. Also, you want to talk about the hours. If they say, what are your hours that you can work? Be honest. If you know that you have a life and you're like, I can only work like 15 to 20 hours a week, be honest. Don't sit here and be like, I can work as many hours as you need me here. If you need me from sun up to sundown, I am here. I am your person. No. Be honest, because a lot of times these facilities, these clinics, they are like, well, we only allow, the maximum for our interns to be here for like 25 hours a week. Or they might say, if you can't be here a minimum of 15 hours a week, then we can't even take you on because we have such a high level of demand from clients that we need somebody. So just make sure that you're open and honest. Make sure that you're not super personable in this interview, and make sure that you practice what you're going to say, and make sure that you do it with somebody else. Like, have somebody else sit across from you and ask you some of these questions, because I'm telling you right now, you're going to get asked them. And if you're not prepared, you can get thrown, because you're already going to have your nerves up. And even if it's like a virtual, interview, that's not going to take away from the part. Like, what you going to do is stop and be like, please pause. I need to like Google what my answer is. No, you need to have this prepared. So with that being said, I really hope this video was informational. If you guys have any questions, please make sure that you put them down below in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, because I know some of y'all be taking this knowledge and not subscribing. I see you, boo, but that's okay. I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.